First one in, Lindsay Farm.
Thank you. And if I'm screwing up with something with I can't see, then just let me know. So thank you all for joining us. I'll declare this meeting, call the meeting to order. And if you all can, where you are, if you have access to a flag, please stand and repeat the pledge of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you for joining the May meeting of the Weakley County Board of Education. Thank you for your interest in education in Weakley County. Our next meeting will be held Thursday, June the 4th, 2020, 5 p.m., hopefully in person or in any means we're able to meet. This being Teacher Appreciation Week, National School Nurse Day yesterday, and School Nutrition Week, and my agenda just died out. I want to say how much I appreciate, I know we appreciate as a board, the great partners we have in our school system, the teachers and nurses and cafeteria workers, what an outstanding job they do day in and day out and continue to do even in light of the situations that we're dealing with there. I'm proud to be associated with these people and I'm glad that we have them on our team, and we're a fabulous school system because of the work of these people and the rest of the system. So thank you for our teachers, thank you for our school nurses, and thank you for our food service nutrition workers. They're just outstanding. Thank you all for your contributions. We'll now move on to approval of the agenda. We have an agenda item to add to the agenda. Is there a motion to add that item to our agenda?
No move.
I think I heard a move. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Okay, thank you all. I'm still having a problem with my video, so I apologize for any that makes. Any questions, comments about the addition to the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? The item is added. Now, is there entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Have motion and seconded. Any questions about the agenda as we have it as amended? All in favor of approving the amended agenda, say aye.
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 All opposed? The amended agenda is approved. Next item of business is to approve the minutes of the April 2nd school board meeting. Is there a motion to consider the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about the agenda we're voting on, the minutes we're voting on? Any additions, deletions, changes, cancellations? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of April 2nd meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. Do we have everybody to talk about maybe the agenda addition first? You want to do that, handle that first?
Randy nodded his head.
Okay. Is Sam available to lead us in that discussion?
I am, Mr. Van Treese. Sorry you can't see me. Thank you all for having me here. As you know, I represent the school board. Unfortunately, tonight you have before you consideration of charges for dismissal of a tenured teacher. You have all, I believe, received those charges and hopefully have had a chance to read them. Excuse me. What you need to vote on tonight is whether, if you as a group feel that if the things in the charges are proven true, if they warrant dismissal. You're not deciding that the person is dismissed tonight. they will have the right, if you so approve, to request a hearing, and it'll be before a hearing officer. So I can answer questions about the charges to some extent. Once again, these are charges. The proof would have to come out in a hearing, but I can answer questions about the procedure. But what you all are doing is reviewing the charges, and if you believe if they are true, if they warrant dismissal, then you would vote yes to approve the charges. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay. So, Chairman, I think your next thing is to request or make a motion to approve the charges or not to approve them.
Okay. In such a serious matter as this, I think it's probably incumbent upon the chairman to make the motion. So as chairman of the board, I will make the motion to proceed. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions about the action that we are doing at this time? I then will call for a vote to move forward. Do we want to do a roll call vote or a voice vote? I'm okay with the voice vote if we're okay with that. All in favor of proceeding, say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Soon
Chairman,
we'll have an administrative review board set up to go through with this. Is that we do that at a
Chairman,
future date?
yeah, what happens next is that Director Frazier will notify the teacher that the board has unanimously voted to approve the charges. The teacher will then have 30 days in which to request a hearing. Once the teacher requests a hearing, the director has 5 days in which to appoint a hearing officer, and then the hearing officer will set the schedule from that point forward. But I'll help Director Frazier in making that notification, and we'll report to you once that's done.
Mr. Jackson, thank you. I'm very sorry to have this action before us. I don't know if we have much choice in the matter, but we'll proceed and see. Hopefully the truth will prove will play out. So thank you for your assistance.
Chairman, I'd like for Sam to address the issue about contacting or making comments to the media, how we need to proceed with that during this process.
Thank you, Director.
Please.
Yes, Chairman, each of the board members in these dismissal proceedings will be a possible appeal. In other words, once the hearing officer makes his or her decision, the board could be asked to review that decision. So because you will be an appellate body at that point, you should not make any comments to news media or to anybody else that would tell them or anyone in your community or in your constituency how you felt or how you would rule on these issues. So this is one of those things that you need to make your own decision, and I don't want you to have any argument that you're partial one way or the other on this. So the best thing to do is not to make comments or discuss these issues until they come back to you on the appeal, if they do. Anybody have questions with that? I'd be glad to address them.
So to the extent that we are free to discuss among ourselves, we still cannot do so outside the Sunshine Law. Is that correct?
Correct. Board members do not need to discuss this amongst themselves until the hearing takes place and the full record exists. And that only then would you discuss it at an open meeting.
Okay. And question about it, basically our response should be we're not at liberty to discuss this matter at this time until it's disposed of or something like that?
Correct. Correct. You just say this is a pending matter and we're not going to discuss pending matters.
Okay.
The documents that you all received with the charges will become public record after the night, so we can disclose those If I'm asked to comment, I will do the same as you all, say that there's potential pending litigation on this. And at this time, I can't speak in detail.
Correct.
Okay.
Chairman, with that, I would be asked to be excused. I don't think it's a good use of the district's funds to have me watch the rest of the meeting, but I'll stay as long as you would like me to.
Well, it was really exciting and thrill-seeking, but if you must go, you please do so.
I haven't been through as many as you guys have, but I've been through plenty, so I understand. But if you need me, feel free to call. Director Frazier has my cell phone number. If you need me to get back on, I'll be glad to at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Guys, I'm sorry we have to have that matter before us, but it's something goes with the big money. Okay, next item on the agenda, I think that's put that to rest, would be granting tenure to Amy Tuck, which inadvertently did not take place next month. Is there a motion for consideration of Ms. Tuck for tenure?
So moved.
Motion, there's a
Second.
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 Moved and seconded. Any questions about the matter of granting tenure to Amy Tuck? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Any opposed? Tenure is granted. Congratulations, Ms. Tuck, and thank you. Next item of business, we have the ELA textbook adoptions for the 2021 school year. We have those identified in the information we received with the minutes. Anybody want to talk, make any comments about this?
I would. For the board members, we have before you the text that we have decided to purchase this year. We had a group of teachers come together and had vendors bring in materials, and we've made a decision these are the best texts moving forward. I'll share a little bit of information about the purchasing process. The ELA adoption is going to be financially paid for in a 2-year period. We'll pay for part of that out of the 1920 budget, and then we'll pay part of it out of next year's budget in July. We were supposed to have math adoption next year, but the state pushed that back a year because of the high cost of purchasing ELA materials. So you will see that in 2 different budget cycles, we will make that purchase, and that will be taken care of. And then math will be pushed back until, which will be 21-22.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. So we have a motion and second. Any discussion about the information? All in favor of approving the adoption, please say aye.
We didn't hear a motion on our end.
Okay.
Okay, here's the motion. I move.
Now, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Thank you.
I meant to have the second before we had the discussion. I'm sorry. I thought I took care of that. Okay. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The textbook adoption has been approved. We have School Board Resolution 2020-01. You may want to talk about this. Appears as though this is designed to bring us in line with all the changes, last-minute changes. Anybody want to make any overall? Excuse me. Is there a motion to consider the School Board Resolution 2020-01?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. The resolution appears to be bringing us in line with the changes and brought about in compliance with the educational requirements. Any additional discussion, Mr. Frazier, Ms. Foster, anybody about that?
I'll just say what we're in essence doing, we have to waive our current board policies for 1 year in order to be able to be under the guidance of the state changes, emergency changes such as number of days of school, graduation requirements, teacher evaluation, so forth, it'll be a 1-year waiver from our normal policy.
Thank you, Ms. Frazier. The only question I've got is, it's been reported at the national media that the Secretary of Education is not supporting some of the national changes. Is that affecting us at this point in time, or is that something that's down the road or not really relevant? Do you know have you met what I'm talking about? Commissioner Ball's.
And I will speak to that toward the end of our discussion. It really doesn't impact the waivers from some of the normal school requirements. It
Okay.
really impacts potential funding more than anything, but I'll speak to that at the end.
Okay, thank you.
I got
Okay.
a quick question, if you don't mind, Steve.
Yes.
So is this waiving all policies or just some?
It is the policies that are listed specifically in that resolution: grading system, graduation requirements, a number of school days, teacher evaluation, attendance. They're specifically laid out in that
Okay.
resolution.
Yeah, I read that. I just wanted to make, you just said, policies. I just wanted to make sure they were enumerated.
No, just the ones that particularly are affected by the state board's actions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All in favor of approving resolution school board 2020-01, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is approved. Next item is a proposed school board revision policy 6.310, first reading. It takes two readings and 2 approvals to change policy. This is the first reading. Is there a motion to consider policy change to 6.310?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about the change, the policy changes? I believe they were identified in the minutes. Anybody want to make any comments relative to any specifics relative to those? Shirts, tucked in shirts, striking that. Size to fit. Belts to be worn, striking that. Any other ramifications of this? Any questions about this?
We
All in favor of, go ahead, I'm sorry.
talked about spirit wear being part of the everyday attire to be allowed. Is that something we're not really wanting to do? Just asking. T-shirt. I mean, I know we were going to try and do a little test pilot after testing was over. Obviously, that went away. But any more consideration about a T-shirt? Kids at Gleason want to wear a Gleason Bulldog football T-shirt. All right, sweatshirt.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was an issue with who would be considered spirit. Is it just sporting teams, or it would be other organizations and stuff like that? So there's a little bit of ambiguity there.
I don't recall that even being an issue, Josh. I thought it was anything that had to do with the school, whether FFA or band or HOSA or anything that had anything to do with the school club, school group. We discussed that possibility. I didn't know where we really were on that.
Let me ask a question, because when it talks about shirts, it says solid shirt with collar, polo, example, not all tears, button up. It says the shirts may have a small design or logo, no larger than that. But you're thinking about, John, are you saying we had discussed including spirit wear T-shirts into that? Is that what you're questioning?
Well, not T-shirts. Slightly, yes, but we also talked about the fashion of merchandise today with small piping and lines and things like that would have, if you had just not that I am endorsing Nike. If you had a Nike polo with white piping down the sleeve or down the side and Westview band, for instance, wanted to purchase those and had a Westview band logo on the left chest, is that piping all of a sudden kicking us out? Is there a problem there? Because as pointed out at our retreat, finding stylish polos, much like Steve's got on right there. I mean,
I
that's
think Steve is modeling the stylish polo, right?
well, but if the polo is stylish, Josh, I would agree. But no, but the polo itself is not, is that considered solid? Because I would say it's not, just from my eye. And I'm just kind of wondering how much of a box we want to paint in when we're not talking about straight spirit wear for Gleason, Gleason basketball. If just something like that, I want to give a little bit of freedom, I guess, to our sponsors of our clubs and our sports and things like that, to find something that looks good, but isn't so drab and plain and dreary and stylish. And I know I'm a sports guy, but some of the coaches and former coaches on here will know if you open up an Under Armour, Nike, Reebok, Holloway, whatever you open up, trying to find a solid color polo to purchase for your group, for your club, for your team is getting more and more difficult.
So what you're saying is basically that to what I'm wearing to be changed so that it could have something like I'm wearing, right?
That's what I would like to see. I think that helps out all of our administrators. I think it helps out our club sponsors, is not making sure that it's a solid black polo that says Dresden Middle School, reads Dresden Middle School. If it's a solid black polo with a little bit of Vegas gold piping on there, I don't understand why that would be a big issue. But I know we've been talking about this for years, and feel free to shoot my thought process down, Mr. Frazier, or anyone else.
I'd be glad to speak to that, John. I think that part of your question is totally valid. In the past with spirit wear, we've tried to designate that only to special days and special events. So I think what I'm hearing you say is twofold. One, maybe that a daily option for students. In the second part, I think the spirit wear and the solid colors could be rectified by just saying if it's an approved spirit wear at your school, it can be multicolored. And that might give some more flexibility for the designs that we now get in some of our sport wear. I'm not against that. I think we have plenty of time between now and August. If you like for us to have conversations as a group of principals and come up with another proposal just directly toward that, we've got time to do that. That would be your request.
I would, and a lot of my feedback is coming from various positions across our county that want to see stay within the codes of the guidelines that the dress code we've set in, but also give a little bit of leeway to move towards the fashion trends that major companies are coming out with now, and give them some options to do something to class it up a little bit if they so choose.
I'm not opposed. We have a motion and a second in the discussion. Maybe we need to vote this first reading down and have a first reading next month with a revised policy draft. Does that sound like a strategy?
Can we table it?
Yes.
That's above my knowledge of Roberts, but if it's possible,
Yes,
that's fine.
you can table it, and then if the will of the board, I will have it on the agenda for our June meeting. We still got June and July. We could have 2 readings there.
All right,
So
so I move to table the motion to the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Let me have a procedural question. Then at that time, we do not have to, we would bring that up as an amendment to this policy. Is that way it would be handled?
Well, we haven't voted on the actual resolution itself, so changes can be made, I think.
Okay. All right. So motion to table, that does not require a second. Is that correct?
I believe it does.
Does require a second? Okay. Is there a second to the table motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of tabling the motion, say aye.
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 All in favor of tabling the policy change, say aye. Okay, aye. Any opposed? Okay, the policy revision has been tabled till the next board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request, please?
Yes, please.
I would request that we would move item 10, the budget resolutions, up the agenda and us discuss that next, because the other items are discussion topics that may take an extended period of time.
Okay, number 10, the budget resolution. Okay, budget amendment. Okay, that's fine with me. Anybody have a problem? Let's see what that is. Looking through my agenda here. That would be resolution 2020-43. Is that the one you speak of, Mr. Frazier?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to put budget resolution 2020-43 on the table for discussion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Budget resolution 2020-43 is been moved and seconded. Any questions about any discussion? Mr. Frazier, you want to talk about it?
Yes, what we're doing, this is normally an end-of-year procedure. We have two different grants that we're trying to clean up and close out. That CSH is coordinated school health, so we're moving monies into the supply line so we can purchase some items that we can use next year. And then ECG is our early childhood programs at each school, and we need to start spending those dollars also. So this, no local money's involved. It's just a procedural process.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Any questions about the nature of the resolution? All in favor of approval of resolution 2020-43, say aye.
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 All opposed? Resolution 2020-43 is approved. Okay, so we've taken care of that. Let me go back here. You have to excuse me. I've got our agenda on another iPad. Okay, discuss graduation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. As you all know, we have postponed our May 15th date. A little history on that. We were encouraged to consult their local health department, which I called a couple of weeks ago and talked with the director down there, and she was pretty adamant that she could not recommend us moving forward at this point of the month of May, and so she requested that we consider moving that back. We had always in mind had a couple of options, option B and C. B would be to move it to June, and if need be, if we can't have it in June, to move it in July. But our thought process now is we're looking at the weekend of June the 12th. In order to have the live ceremony, which I think is important for us to do for our seniors, they've missed out on a lot. I'd like for us to make it as normal as possible. We're still going to have to follow the social distancing guidelines, which means a couple of things. We're going to have to limit the number of people in our facilities at one time. Not an issue at Gleason or Greenfield. With about 30 graduates in each class, we can comfortably give family tickets, maybe as many as 8 to each member, and spread those folks out in the gym with the distancing requirements of so many feet apart and in so many rows apart that you have to seat people. At Dresden and at Martin Westview, it becomes a little more difficult. We have 80 graduates at at Dresden High School. We have 134, I believe, at Westview. And so it's not feasible for us to have guests and our graduates in the gym at one time and adhere to those guidelines. So we're looking at having multiple ceremonies, particularly at Westview. Mr. Davis and I have discussed, we're looking at potentially having 3 ceremonies, 1 on Friday night and 2 on Saturday afternoon. The negative is they're not entirely together as a group, but the positive is they will be able to have guests. They can have family members attend. We'll probably we'll be spacing, or we'll be designating the seating arrangement there and determining how many guests per child we can get. But we think that's a safe way to let them have a live graduation. Now, Mr. West potentially is looking at 2 ceremonies in the gym. We also have discussed about having it on the football field. You could possibly have a little larger crowd and spread your students out. You have to have them 6 feet apart in all directions in their chairs. The problem is you're gambling with weather and heat if you go tonight. So I'm not saying that Chuck might not decide to do that, but that becomes an issue. And then also patrolling people coming up and trying to get around the fence and various things. We'd have to have some extra police presence there for that event. So I've discussed with principals after we get done with end of year things, we're going to Zoom together and involve our school nurse, our coordinated school health personnel, and we're going to make the best decisions we can in order to move forward with that. But we're hoping and planning on having a live ceremony the weekend of June the 12th. Any questions or comments?
Question, I've got a question. In the case of where we have to split up the graduating class, and I'm not sure anybody would want to do this, but is it feasible to have all graduates sit in on both or 3 ceremonies? I'm not sure anybody would want to do that, but do you think it's feasible to consider that?
Our intentions are, we've discussed this and we'll plan, try to move forward. We plan on a few things happen that may be a little different. We would like to live stream all of our ceremonies. And so we're going to work through that process and try to live stream that, whether it's via Facebook, where if maybe a student has some elderly parents who don't feel comfortable of coming out in that gathering, that they could view that. And then also in that setting for Westview and Dresden, if they're divided, they could join in and view that ceremony via our technology. So we're going to move forward with that plan and try to make that happen. Another thing that I didn't address, that a negative from having to postpone, we have a few students that are going to be unable to attend in June. Some of them have military commitments. We've also had a few students that have contacted us and say they just don't feel comfortable. They don't feel that it's safe for them to attend and have asked for us just to give them their diploma. Any person who is unable to attend or doesn't want to attend, any graduate, we're going to give them their diploma. Particularly for our students who enroll in the military, our plans are next year when we have things back to somewhat a sign of a normalcy, we'd like to invite them back to their school, maybe at a big event, a basketball game, football game, and recognize them for their graduation, but also salute their service to our country. So that's our plans for that group of students.
Would it be feasible to hold an individual, not a ceremony, but a presentation for the seniors, for the military people that would, allow us to do a current year, not necessarily a ceremony, but at least maybe a presentation in their cap and gown? Or is that not be safe either? But is any discussion about that?
I think that's possible. One of the things we're going to have to think about, even in our June ceremony, some of the guidelines deals with passing out diplomas, and the recommendation is for us not to physically, as administrators, pass out diplomas and shake hands and do the normal, but the recommendation is for students to be on the stage or whatever your normal area is individually, and at that point be able to take pictures. So if a student is joining the military and they'd love to have a picture made and do a presentation, I think we could arrange for them to come to the school campus, for example, Dresden High, out in front of the building, that awning area, and us take pictures of them with their diploma. I think that's doable. And we'll be reaching out individually to our seniors and giving them some more specifics about our plans here in the next week or so.
Is there any other questions about the matter?
My last comment I would say is I have I had a Zoom or a conference call with neighboring districts, our core districts, and some of those neighboring districts are moving forward with their May scheduled graduation ceremonies. And almost to every one of those that I talked with had discussions with the health department who discouraged them from having those events, but they've decided to move forward. And Steve and I have spoken to Sam Jackson, our attorney, about that, and he says that's not a good decision by the board for potential liability issues. If the health department is asking you to move it back and you don't do that, that could be an issue for the board if something were to happen. So that's another layer to our decision making.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. You're right. We did, going against when we were asked to refer to the health departments and we did that and we go against that, that would be a problem for us going down the road potentially, yes. Well, I want to thank the administrators and school level and system about their openness and willing to think about and discuss options. Yeah, this class has had to deal with a lot. Sure would be nice to do something special for them. So anything we can do along that lines, I think is a good thing. Any other questions about graduation? Next item of business is discuss summer activities. What's
I will start with that.
TSSAA has been talking about some stuff. What is that? Athletics or everything?
That TSLA conversation deals with our summer activities, but I'm going to backtrack a little bit, just to update you all where we stand in case you get questions about end of year closure. Our teachers have been back at school in staggered schedules, completing grades, taking care of matters that deal with our report card. We're waiting on dual enrollment grades for our high school students, which we anticipate having them by the 1st of next week at the latest. Our plans is we will be passing out report cards the week of May 18th. We'll begin on that Monday, depending on the number of students in each school. Each principal is making their own schedule. For example, Westview may pass out junior cards on Monday and sophomore cards on Tuesday, where at Sharon School, they don't have many students. They may do them all in one day with a particular schedule. So we have a planned schedule for report cards. We've currently been in the process at some schools of doing what we call swap days. Students had items that they left at school and or they have items they need to return to school. So we have coordinated those dates at each school site, whichever works best for them, and contacted parents, and that process has gone relatively well so far. And then 2 other events that have been changed because of our closure. We have a pre-K registration schedule coming up, and we'll be doing that at all of our primary schools. And then also kindergarten registration. Kindergarten registration, we'll be announcing those dates tomorrow. I have a Zoom meeting with those principals with logistics. Our plan are for pre-K, we're going to have one day where parents come pick up their packets. They can take those home. There's information they won't have on their person, income information, and maybe birth certificates, those kind of things. And the next week, we're going to have a date for them to return that material. And that will allow us to prepare for next year. And we'll do something similar to that process for kindergarten. So that's closing out this year. Speaking about summer activities, you are correct there. I've been contacted by Mr. Childress, the director of TSSAA. There are about half a dozen superintendents, TSSAA staff, a couple of medical experts that will be having a Zoom conference next week to get guidance on how we can move forward as far as starting to open up our facilities for practices, weight training, what they're thinking that our games might look like next year. We have a national expert that the National Federation is using that's kind of leading that discussion. And we also have one of the medical experts from Vanderbilt that will be involved with that. We have shared with our school principals up until the end of what we're saying school, the end of May is our normal end, that we're going to keep our facilities closed for those kind of activities, our ball practices or weight training, cheerleading practices, those kind of normal summer things until we can have a better plan moving forward. Because whenever we are able to open up in those activities, we're going to have to adhere to some specific guidelines, which is a new norm. Unfortunately, we all having to do things what we may not like or may not be used to. But for example, if we're able to open up our weight room and we're going to limit how many students can be there, they have to adhere to social distancing. They have to wear a mask. We have to clean the equipment. We have to take temperatures. There are a lot of things that we're going to be required to do that we just need to have a plan in place. I know that some of our sister districts are jumping on that and kind of avoiding the requests and requirements, but I don't think that's what we need to do. We want to keep our kids safe, and we obviously want them to get back in some kind of a normalcy as soon as possible. But I think we need to wait till we get some clear guidance from TWSAA moving forward. There will not be any summer school classes this summer. All of our remediation, our loss of learning activities or plans will be moved toward August. We'll have a definite plan of how to make up any learning lost or any situation we feel like our children may be behind in certain areas academically. We'll do that when we return in the fall. So that's where we pretty much stand, where our buildings are going to remain to be closed except for special situations where staff have to be there for the remainder of this month.
Mr. Frazier, are you part of that 12-member group that's going to be meeting with the TWSAA?
I assume I am. I didn't know how many of us it was. I just got a personal call from Bernard. I know that there are 6 superintendents, and I think Mr. Childress, Mark Reeves, and 2 physicians. Now, I don't know who the other 2 persons are going to be, but yes, I will be involved with that call.
One thing that I hope that TWSAA needs to be put in a leadership role here. They're not making decisions. We're going to hear a lot about competitive advantage and all this other stuff, and the sports go, so sometimes do schools. And there needs to be some leadership from the TWSAA. I know Bernard Childress and Mark Reeves are good people. You know, there needs to be some leadership there because, as you pointed out, there's a lot of angst going on amongst our coaches and I know our teachers, administrators, and everybody else. And it's not just about athletics. It's about when can our band students get back out there? When can all these kids get back? There hasn't been much leadership from the TWSAA. And I read an article in the Nashville Tennessean yesterday that Davidson County schools may not go back till after Labor Day. And so there's an issue there that I hope is relayed to the TWSAA to get everybody on the same page, so there is not a competitive disadvantage amongst whether it's bigger schools, smaller schools, whatever it may be, but to get some leadership and guidance there from especially a rural school system like us.
I appreciate you saying that, and that I'll even add to that. Our hopes as school leaders was that the governor would make a standard decision about graduation. But that's controversial, and so basically they passed the buck to school boards and health departments. And the same thing has happened with TWSAA. I appreciate that they're reaching out to us for our input, but in the past, they've not wanted school district leaders' input. They wanted to only be school level people. But now, when there's a very serious controversial decision, we're going to be involved with that decision, which I appreciate that. But I will share that. I totally agree, John. It's easy to say, hey, everybody, let's just put the brakes on to the end of May, and then we'll see what June looks like, and we'll have a plan for everyone. But they didn't do that, and so you're right, that pressure's out there for why are we not doing this when actually we're trying to do what we think is safe. And no one more than me would like to see us go back to normal. I can promise you that, but we need to be conscientious.
Does that wrap up the discussion of summer activities?
I guess part 1A of that is the fundraising efforts by our clubs and schools. Mr. Frazier, is that, because there not to be a lot of face-to-face interaction, but this is a pivotal time for a lot of our organizations within our schools to raise funds. And I know that's kind of funny in the climate, financial and economic climate that we're in, but how are we addressing those for fall fundraising efforts by our fall organizations and groups?
I'm glad you asked that because I dealt with that today. I've been getting phone calls, and the scenarios for fundraising differ from school to school. Immediate concerns, for example, Martin Middle completed a fundraising activity right before we got out of school. They have collected money, items are ready to be delivered, but it's really not safe to have our kids out going door to door, those things. The company's agreed to hold the items until fall. We're all hoping we're going to be back in a better situation for that. So that's an immediate where we've already done the fundraiser, and so we're going to have to deal with that. Other situations, for example, Westview football had intended to do a lift-a-thon to get new uniforms. Well, they've changed their course, and now they're seeking donations in the community. A couple other schools have contacted me about their normal things. What I would say, and what I would hope that as a board you all would agree with, I think with some of these things we can push back hopefully till August. And then, as I shared with Martin Middle, if we get in a situation where we can't do our normal fundraising, then we as a board, we may have to, for the first time, look at providing some extra funding for our schools to help with some of these payments for uniforms and equipment, which is not a normal thing, but this is not a normal time. So I would say my recommendation would be let's put those things off until August. And then if we still can't do those things, we may need to address as a board, how can we financially help some of these groups in this unusual time?
Does that preclude a school group from basically asking for donations that are voluntarily made without necessarily personal interaction or personal contact?
It does not prohibit that at all. You know, the problem is our businesses are getting hammered with the economic situation. So, you know, we've got great partnerships and folks who give a lot of money to our schools that right now are worried about keeping their funding alive for their business. So it may not be as easily accessed as it has been in the past. So the answer is yes, they can do that, but knowing that they may not have as much success right now, even folks who want to give may be afraid to do so at this time.
Yeah. Any other questions about summer activities or anything before the fall? Fraser, you want to speculate about fall or just?
I will. I'll address two things, and you all can chime in, ask any question. I'll do my best to answer those. Someone mentioned the national issue as far as from the Department of Education in Washington, some things that have come down this week that they don't really impact our policies and our rules statewide, but it could potentially impact our funding. As you all know, the voucher bill was ruled illegal this year in the past week, and so there'll be some appeal process at the state level. But we got sidetracked this week in Washington. We are all expecting to get stimulus money because of this crisis. And we were notified about a month ago with the projection, I think you all may even got a copy of it, that they're projecting that we would get $939,000 to be spent over a 2-year period to help recoup some of the lost funding that we may see or the extra expenses we may incur because of the closure for things like maybe purchasing more technology in the future if we have another situation, helping with the extra feeding program. We're going to have to provide extra services for our special ed students this year that they missed out on some of their normal services, that we could use those dollars. Well, that funding was established based on Title I funding. Title I funding is the monies that we earn as a district, our share from the state, which is based on our free and reduced numbers. The national law says any Title I student is eligible for that money, regardless if they're in a public school or a private school. So every year we contact our local private schools and we have conversations with them. Betsy goes and meets with them. And if they have students eligible for that money, they're eligible to receive their portion. For example, if a school has 50 students and 10 of them are eligible, then we could have to provide the funding for those 10 students. In the past situations, many of your private schools have chosen not to do that because they don't want the purse strings that are tied to that. once you take federal money, you then have to start following federal guidelines. What Mr. Voss has said this week is that private schools, not only can they get the money, they get to count every student regardless of income. Well, that's completely different than what we get to do in public schools. We don't get to count our economically students that are in good shape. Their families have good jobs and don't meet that criteria. So what we potentially could have is some very wealthy families who send their children to private schools receive funding that's usually targeted for economically disadvantaged. That could be a big hit for all public schools. And so we are currently fighting that. We've had conversations today with our national lobbyists, with the National Superintendent's Organization at the state level organization also. So that is something that I'm just saying another hit or another swing toward public education. And so I'm kind of concerned about that. That's funding, really not policy. So I will address that. I have spoken to our team of building leaders, which I will say have just been amazing during our closure. Our principals, our supervisory staff, our teachers, our support staff that had just gone above and beyond to do things outside the box to keep our services provided to our students. And we're starting to think about what does next year look like. And so our plans are probably early in June, we're going to start having conversations. We may even develop 3 or 4 different committees and have a task force to think about what does next year look like. And I'm thinking 3 or 4 things. One, which would be all of our hope that we'd be back to normal, have school as we always had. Everybody come, all of our activities are 100%. That would be a wish and a dream for everyone. That's the first scenario. The second one would be we're not allowed to come back in school in August. That's probably the worst case scenario. Second is they tell us that it's not safe. At this time, we're going to recommend you close schools for a further period of time. The third option, which may happen, we may see this, when the General Assembly comes back in the 1st of June, they determine I would say the window of the school calendar. We as a board actually determine our calendar, but they decide things such as number of days, start dates. And so there's some rumblings that they could come back and say no school can start until September 15th and then go until June the 15th of next year. That would be option 3. The fourth option, the one that we're going to have to start thinking about it, as bad as we all hate it, is we come back to school in August on our normal calendar, but we've got to adhere to these social distancing guidelines, which means I get information all the time with ideas from folks that maybe we would start out only going half of a day the first month. We might alternate kids coming every other day. Part of them come one day, part of them another. High school students who have access to technology might stay at home and be able to access their coursework with a teacher doing a Zoom lesson, and students who can't access, we bus them to school. We have them live on our campuses. Busing will become an issue. You know, we have some buses, our 90 passenger buses are about full every day. We would have to start probably running 2 routes in some areas of the county, which would mean we may have to rethink our start and stop time. Some kids may have to come and be there at 7:30 and another group come at 8:15, and our dismissals may be different. Something I saw a recommendation today was that, and this came from the American Pediatric Society, 2 things to consider. They're trying to encourage us to open school, but do things such as teachers change classes, but students don't. All feeding would take place inside of classrooms, not in the cafeteria. So I'm telling you all this to say that we're going to have to come up with a plan. We can't wait until July the 15th and say, oh, you know, now they're going to make us do this. We're going to have to scramble to decide something. We need to have a worst case scenario plan moving forward. And I will coordinate our team to do that. I may ask for some of you board members to help serve on some of those committees. We'd love to have your input, but you know, things like we've already started purchasing the infrared thermometers. We're getting prepared for that. We may have to screen our employees and check our children's temperature when they come in the building. And one of my colleagues shared with me yesterday, they went into a restaurant and the waitress screened their temperature at their table. So Mask. We're being told we may all have to wear masks, students and teachers next year, which is, even though it might be a safety issue and the right thing, that's pretty traumatic for our smaller children. So we're going to be working on that where we don't get caught off guard, and we're going to ask for you all's input, may even involve a few teachers with that. So I think we just have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I think that's a smart thing to do, and we'll keep you all in the loop all the way along.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Any other questions from the board? I don't know if masks qualify for dress code or not. Something to think about.
Well, not only that, we're looking at requirements. We're probably going to have to install multiple hand sanitizers across our facilities. We're going to have to put those on the bus. We're going to have to clean areas multiple times a day. Just going to be a little different protocol than what we're used to, which means we're going to have to rearrange staff differently, students differently, and our resources differently.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Any other business before the board?
I wouldn't say it's much of business as much as it is a comment. We've talked about the upcoming election season. Small business roundtable for the state of Tennessee is really pushing high-speed internet service to rural communities. If you do have the opportunity to talk to the people running for office, I would encourage all of us, teachers, administrators, everyone, to be talking about that. Obviously, we need to be talking about the importance of public education in Weakley County, where 90-some-odd% depend on the public school system to not only be their source of education, but their primary care physician and their primary source of nutrition. So, Mr. Frazier asked all of us to really be a mobilized group about a year ago when we were all sitting, most all of us were sitting in a meeting at UTM. So it's a good time to get to know every single one of these candidates that are running for state representative in our area, because I've talked to all but one. And they're all very approachable. They all seem to want to get positive and negative feedback. So just to kind of follow Mr. Frazier's lead a couple years ago, I think it's really important. We obviously continue to talk about public education, but 1A is internet accessibility in rural communities all across the state of Tennessee. And that can start right here because our county, don't get me started on why we've not done it, but we're a perfect test case for why it needs to be done and what's happened with this bat casserole virus. So I would encourage all of us to do that.
Thank you, John. Yes, absolutely. We are and have a lot of control over our future, especially through our legislation, so through our representative process. It's very important for us to get engaged in that. Thank you. Any other business before the board? Once again, thank you for our teachers, our school nurses, our school nutrition staffs for the excellent job they've done. We know they'll will do. We appreciate their contribution to public education. If there's not an objection to, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. See you next month, if not before. Thank you all.
Stay tuned for the next edition of Hollywood Squares.